Part 134. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1331. On the shore, Lin Yu frowned and said, "Elder Li seems to have discovered that kid and is chasing him." She hesitated to go into the river. After all, after being injured by Yang fire, she couldn't guarantee whether the fairy weapon in the river would also hurt her body. You must know that neither the great immortal king nor his 4 cronies dare to approach the Duanxian river. Even when there is water splashing, they will subconsciously step aside. And Lin Yu knew very well that their demon moon sect was originally from Qingping Star. If it hurts the body, it will be a big loss. "Sect Master, would you like any of your subordinates to follow me and have a look?" Elder Zhou took the initiative to ask Yang. He is also Lin Yu's confidant and knows how the demon moon sect will change after Lin Yu obtains the blood moon immortal artifact. By then, with enough blood moon power, they will be able to break through the tribulation period, and there is a great chance that they can follow Lin Yu to the fairy world. Of course, Lin Yu did not want to go to the fairy world immediately. She was still prepared and would not go to the fairy world until everything was safe. Therefore, as long as you reflect your own value, their benefits are indispensable. "Don't go yet, stay here." Lin Yu glanced at Elder Zhou and said lightly. Elder Zhou was slightly disappointed, but he did not dare to have any opinions. Simply, he just stayed away a little, sat on the ground and started practicing. Lin Yu nodded secretly, then looked at Immortal King Durong and said, "Immortal King, the little girl has a problem, and I would like to ask the Immortal King for help." Feeling that Elder Li's aura was getting farther and farther, Lin Yu also made other preparations. "Fairy Lin, please speak." Immortal King Durong said politely. "This Yang fire seems to hurt my origin, so the little girl wants to study this Yang fire. I wonder if the Immortal King has the spirit to collect this Yang fire, a pseudo-immortal weapon." Collecting sun fire. There was no flaw in Lin Yu's words, and Durong Immortal King did see that the Yang fire would cancel out the power of the blood moon in Lin Yu. Such a pseudo-immortal weapon does exist, but it is only in the royal city. How about Fairy Lin accompany me to get it? Or should I ask my subordinates to get it? This kind of pseudo-immortal weapon is not uncommon in Qingping Immortal Kingdom, but it is useless and of little use. Yang fire will burn all living things. There are many immortals who have the idea of using the sun fire, but they all end in vain. "That's good," Lin Yu said with a smile, "let's wait until we finish the things here." Immortal King Durong smiled and said, "Fairy Lin, I have always had a question. Is this person the one who hurt your subordinates and is the one who conspired with my subordinates?" "It's not clear," Lin Yu shook her head and said, "When I found her, I only saw him and no one else. This sun has a profound ability in formations. If not for this, I would have killed him long ago." "Array? Is this an array master?" Immortal King Durong was shocked. Before Lin Yu arrived, he wanted to find an array master. He wanted to block the immortal mist by setting up an array and try to see if he could open the passage between the immortal kingdom and the spiritual world. Yes, he is a formation master. There is nothing to hide in this point, Lin Yu also nodded. "So, how did Fairy Lin come to the fairyland?" Immortal King Durong's heart condensed, so he asked. "I also came here by chance through the formation. Of course there is a way out, but..." "Just what?" Immortal King Durong's breath tightened. He was more concerned about whether he could leave than the life and death of his subordinates. Lin Yu's thoughts changed in her mind and she said, "I need a spiritual weapon to leave, but the spiritual weapon was taken away by the sun, that's why I pursue him so closely. If the Immortal King Durong can kill the sun and take it back, I'm very grateful to you, little lady, for that spiritual weapon." She has already seen that Durong Immortal King is eager to leave, and she uses this as an excuse to ask Durong Immortal King to help. But Immortal King Durong became suspicious. He is not stupid. Lin Yu said that she came here unexpectedly, and ended up wanting a pseudo-immortal weapon that condensed yang fire. Before she could explain clearly, she mentioned leaving again. Among them, there is no flaw in perfection, but it is the biggest flaw. Since immortal King Durong dares to rebel against the immortal emperor, he must be capable. However, he did not expose it directly. If Lin Yu could take him away, what's the harm in being used? The most terrifying thing is that a person is not even worth using. It's easy to say, Immortal King Durong said immediately, as long as Fairy Lin leads people out, we will immediately take action together to kill him. However, we really don't dare to enter the Xianxia River, so please forgive me, sect leader Lin. Lin Yu was silent for a moment. It seemed that the broken immortal river really had an impact on them, so she said, there is no need to worry, King Rongxian. I am not an unreasonable person. I will wait until the kid comes out. I believe Elder Li will not disappoint me. As Elder Li's aura faded away, Lin Yu could feel that they had left the range of the Duanxian River, and might even have reached the opposite bank. But the power of the soul couldn't get through, and she couldn't completely determine Elder Li's position. At this moment, after Zuyun speeded up and pulled away from Elder Li, he maintained a subtle distance. Elder Li can follow closely, but he can't kill him if he wants to. He slowed down slightly and began to think about what happened after killing Elder Li with the self-destruction formation. It is far away from Duanxian River, so will Immortal King Derong also join forces with Lin Yu? This will determine whether Zuyun wants to call Zhou Pao out, and then take him to escape the pursuit of Derong Immortal King. Even he could not find Zhou Pao in the Dozhuan Xinyi formation, so Lin Yu would not be able to find him either. In less than an hour, Zuyun poked his head out from under the water. Without a moment's delay, he quickly took out the spirit stone and sprinkled it on the open space. Self-destruction formation. One was not enough. Zuyun arranged 3 self-destruction formations in succession, and set up a spirit-inducing formation, which was enough to make Elder Li suffer. Zuyun turned around and glanced at the surging water surface. He knew that Elder Li was not far away. With a fixed gaze, he quickly used the earth escape technique and escaped into the stone wall beside him. After a while, a column of water rushed out of the water surface, and Elder Li, dressed in black, suddenly emerged from the water. When he found that there was a space here, he was also very surprised, but he still remembered to find Zuyun's location as soon as possible. However, this place was empty. The sect master said that this boy has mysterious means to escape her pursuit, so I have to be more careful. He slowly landed on the shore and stepped on the spirit-inducing array. The spiritual power surged, and several self-destructing arrays were quickly detonated. The spirit stone glowed, and the spiritual power began to surge, and this space was also shaken. Not good, these spiritual powers. Elder Li was shocked. The space was so small, but the surge of spiritual power was so strong. This would definitely cause a big explosion. And the restored moonlight power was originally converted from spiritual power. Not only the amount was small but also not pure enough. It's too late to run. The spirit-inducing array is located in the center of the self-destructing array. When Elder Li activated it, he was obviously surrounded by the self-destructing array. Boom! In this small space, the sound of the self-destructing array was particularly loud, and the power was even greater. In an instant, he was engulfed by the turbulent flow of spiritual power, and Elder Li also lost consciousness, and his life and death were unknown. Zuyun had already used the earth escape technique to escape far away. The ground also had a vibration force, and the people standing on the shore felt it. However, the broken immortal river did not make a splash. A fight has started, and it's so noisy. The immortal King Derong frowned and looked at Lin Yu. Elder Li is going to die. Lin Yu's words were shocking. She couldn't feel Elder Li's breath, but she could guess from the vibration coming from underground that the power of the demon moon in Elder Li's body could not cause such a level of vibration. Then, this must have been caused by Zuyun. What? Not far away, Elder Joe stood up suddenly, shocked and angry. Master, that kid, is so strong. He was a little unconvinced. He thought that Zuyun had killed Elder Zhu with the help of one potion, but how could he have such strength when facing Elder Li alone? Can the God transformation stage kill the tribulation stage? This is simply unimaginable. Then is there any meaning for them to practice? Those who can escape from this master are definitely strong. Lin Yu's face was gloomy, and there was a hint of murderous intent in his eyes. This boy must be killed. Derong Immortal King raised his eyebrows and smiled, saying, Fairy Lin, don't be nervous. This boy made such a big fuss, I believe he won't live long. After all, in addition to the immortal weapons, there is also a huge monster in this broken immortal river. Lin Yu looked at this place, a little surprised. Demon Beast. Derong Immortal King grinned, the demon beasts of Qingping Immortal Kingdom will definitely be attracted by this boy. If he stays in the broken immortal river, he will be besieged by demon beasts. If he escapes from the broken immortal river, can he still escape from our palm? I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1332. Immortal King Dai also has his own plans, and staying here is not a good thing. Only when Lin Yu knew that Zuyun was dead would she start to leave. To be honest, whether Zuyun dies or not has become unimportant after he found a way to leave the fairyland. Even if Jogun did rebel and follow Zuyun, so what? The meaning of Jogun is to do things for him in order to prepare for leaving the fairyland. Now that he could leave with Lin Yu, Jogun, and even the 4 surviving cronies around him became dispensable. He now needed to make Lin Yu feel at ease. When hearing what Immortal King Derong said, Lin Yu immediately asked, Warcraft? Not a monster. Fairy Lin, Derong Immortal King said in a relaxed tone, the monster beasts in our fairy kingdom are nothing at all, but monsters are a completely different kind of creature. The Duanxian River is their only place to survive. If people destroy it, those monsters will definitely come here, so we just have to wait here for a while. Different creatures. Lin Yu remembered it in her heart, as if she remembered something, but she stopped asking questions and chose to listen to the words of Immortal King Derong for the time being and stay here to wait and see. The ground was still shaking, and the tremors were getting stronger and stronger, which made Lin Yu more and more frightened. Thinking of the explosive power of the previous star-shifting formation, it was nothing more than that. This guy has so many tricks. Under Elder Lin's pursuit, could he still deploy such powerful means? So if the monster comes, can it hurt him? Lin Yu wasn't sure. The vibration lasted for a long time, a full half an hour, because the space was far enough away from the ground. Zuyun was still hiding in the soil and did not appear. The surge of spiritual energy from the self-destruction array affected his use of the earth escape technique. But fortunately, it didn't hurt him. After the vibration stopped and the spiritual power calmed down and dissipated between heaven and earth, he slowly began to use the earth escape technique. Through judgment, he knew that he was on the opposite side of the Duanxian River. After escaping to only more than 10 feet above the ground, Zuyun stopped. He didn't know the situation on the ground, but he knew that Lin Yu had definitely not left, and the focusing cup was still in his hand. How about calling Zhou Pao out? Zuyun frowned and thought, it's not impossible, but he is surrounded by mud. If Zhou Pao appears, he will be affected by the mud, which will be difficult to handle. Meanwhile, the shore. I haven't seen any movement from the warcraft for a long time. Lin Yu stared at Derong Immortal King and said. But seeing the expression of Immortal King Derong, it didn't seem to be fake, and he frowned. Fairy Lin, maybe there are no magical beasts hiding near here. It's far away and it will take some time to get here. Lin Yu was skeptical about this explanation, but she didn't want to waste too much time on Zuyun, so she said, in this case, I will let Elder Zhou stay, and you will stay with these few. If that boy is really there's nothing you can do if you run away. If we can gather Yang Huo early, collect the Blood Moon Immortal artifact before Zuyun, and then use the Blood Moon Immortal artifact to kill him back, that would be a good idea. Immortal King Durong had this intention. Although he seemed indifferent, he actually wanted to go back early so that he could reach the spiritual world with Lin Yu as soon as possible. However, his face would not show it. The more anxious he was, the more likely he would be manipulated by Lin Yu. Fairy Lin, I really want to find this lady, and then find my cronies. Lin Yu shook her head and said, that boy, maybe there is some space spiritual weapon that can absorb people. Otherwise, how could such a good person disappear out of thin air? I believe that as long as we kill him and take away the spiritual weapon, we can naturally absorb people. Let it go. It's just not good for you or me to continue wasting time. That. Immortal King Durong pretended to hesitate for a moment before reluctantly agreeing. Let the 4 immortal officials stay, plus Elder Zhou, there will be 5 people here. I believe that as long as they don't go into the river and pay attention, even if Zuyun comes to kill him, he will not be their opponent. Lin Yu stepped onto the flying boat and said to Elder Zhou, you must be careful and kill him directly if you have the chance. Don't talk nonsense with that kid. Lin Yu also suffered a secret loss at the hands of Zuyun. If she had taken action directly and not talked nonsense with him, Zuyun might have died under his blood moon power. Yes, Sect Master, my subordinates will definitely keep it in mind. Thinking that Elder Li was killed by this divine transformation stage, Elder Zhou will of course be more careful. After the immortal boat went away, the 4 immortal officials also started chatting with Elder Zhou. When Zuyun talked about the spirit world, they learned that there were a large number of people in the tribulation stage ascending together in the spirit world some time ago. Their eyes were filled with incomparable expressions. Envious. Elder Zhou smiled and said, don't worry, our sect master can return to the spirit world. However, the sect master has his heart attached to this, so he must kill that kid. In this way, the elder stick can also be rescued. He knew Jogun's name. But at the same time, I also have some contempt for the way people in this fairy country practice and name themselves. Immortal roots are determined by heaven, there is nothing we can do about it. The name you choose comes with your immortal roots. This way. Zuyun did not call Zhou Pao out in the end. He wanted to leave directly but was unwilling to do so, so he cautiously stuck his head out from a distance, just in time to see the ferry boat go away. It was too far away and he couldn't see clearly, and he was afraid that using the divine eye technique would attract attention, so he had to give up. Seeing that there were only 5 people on the other side of the river, he was slightly relieved. The immortal boat flew away, which at least meant that Immortal King Durong was not here, but it did not mean whether Lin Yu was still there. These 2 people just can't fight, they are really in trouble. The Blood Moon Immortal artifact cannot fall into Lin Yu's hands, what should we do? He wasn't worried about the 5 people on the other side. After much thought, Zuyun decided to go back to Duxian town first. Zhou run. With the thought in his mind, he called Zhou Pao out. Before he could say hello, he immediately said, hide. As soon as he finished speaking, the yin immortal root between Zhou Pao's eyebrows suddenly grew in size, instantly covering the 2 of them. Zuyun found himself in a sphere. The sphere was translucent and could clearly see the outside world, but obviously, the outside world could not see the 2 of them. On the immortal boat, Immortal King Durong was shaken and was discovered by the keen Lin Yu. Did your men come out? Lin Yu immediately asked. They were not far away. If there was any news about Zuyun, she would be willing to kill him back. Yes, but it disappeared immediately. I haven't felt which of my subordinates it was. Immortal King Derong said truthfully, of course, in the hope that Lin Yu could go back with him instead of turning back. It seems that the boy has come out. Lin Yu pondered for a moment and said, I hope your men and mine will not let us down. Don't worry, it won't happen. Immortal King Derong said calmly, and sent the immortal boat back quickly. And here, under Zhu Yun's order, Zhou Pao leaned towards the bank of Duanxian River. Master, we can't go any further. If it gets contaminated by the Duanxian River water, we will show up immediately. After reaching a certain distance, Zhou Pao stopped. Well, just stop here, Zhu Yun nodded, looked carefully at the other side of the river, and found those people chatting casually, and he knew what was going on. Let's go back to Duxian town. If Lin Yu was still nearby, it would be impossible for Elder Zhou to be so relaxed and comfortable. Go back there. Zhou Pao was shocked and thought he heard wrongly. That's right. When we return to Duxian town, I won't worry if Master Mou doesn't fight with Immortal King Derong. After hearing this, Zhou Pao said calmly, then why don't you go directly to King Derong city? Master, I can take you in. Zhu Yun was stunned for a moment, then said happily, yes, instead of going to Duxian town, go directly to Derong King city. Yes, master. Zhou Pao's speed was very fast. Under the Yin immortal roots wrap, he could not even reveal a breath. Under the cover of Qing Ping's shadow, Zhou Pao was at ease. He is already a top-grade immortal root, and the immortal emperor will not be able to feel his presence at all, unless he removes the Yin power shield at this time. But in comparison, it was still difficult for him to pass the ferry boat faster. Zhu Yun could only observe with the naked eye a golden light spot on the horizon, which was very small. Until it got dark, Zhu Yun finally saw a huge royal city. Compared with Dian King City, Dian King City gave him an aura of turbulent times. Obviously, this city had also gone through killings and battles. I just don't know what kind of immortal King Derong is. Master, go directly to the royal palace, or sneak into the royal city first. Zhou Pao asked Zhu Yun for his opinion. Zhu Yun raised his eyebrows and said, I'm here now, of course I'm going to the king's palace. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1333. At this time, many immortal officials stood on the open space in front of the palace. These were the mayors of the Derong royal city. Wan Poshan and Luo Xiaoyu were among them. Where did the immortal king go? Why hasn't he shown up for so long? Wan Poshan frowned tightly, while Luo Xiaoyu beside him whispered. You ask me, who should I ask? Wan Poshan said helplessly. They didn't see the Derong immortal king leave, and didn't know that the Derong immortal king had just returned. Right in the palace. Fairy Lin, this is the pseudo-immortal weapon that can collect yang fire. Derong immortal king took out a compass-shaped pseudo-immortal weapon and handed it to Lin Yu, saying, this king still has to go to work. Fairy Lin can try first to see if you can control this pseudo-immortal weapon. Lin Yu glanced outside. It was getting dark. Although there was still yang fire coming from the west, she was afraid that she couldn't collect it all, so she simply said, thank you, Fairy King Rong. You're welcome, Derong immortal king smiled, and then turned and left. At this time, Zhou Pao used the Yin immortal route to sneak into the palace with Zhu Yun. They agreed to wait until the dead of night before looking for an opportunity to act. In fact, Wan Poshan and Luo Xiaoyu were also taken into consideration. After watching the immortal King Derong leave, the two dared not breathe. There was no way that the immortal King Derong could see them, but Lin Yu, I don't know what mysterious method can sense their existence. Seeing Lin Yu constantly playing with the pseudo-immortal weapon in his hand, Zhu Yun's first thought was to steal the pseudo-immortal weapon when Lin Yu was not prepared. I was afraid that Lin Yu would hide the pseudo-immortal weapon in the storage ring. In this case, other plans can only be implemented. Fortunately, the immortal King Derong asked Lin Yu to try whether he could use the pseudo-immortal weapon first, which made Zhu Yun relieved. Different power systems will naturally be different. After waiting for more than half an hour, it was completely dark outside. For Zhou Pao, this would be more convenient for him to act. They were in Lin Yu's house, quietly waiting for the opportunity. Finally, there were footsteps outside, and Lin Yu looked over. It was the immortal King Derong. She put down the pseudo-immortal weapon and went straight to meet him. Immortal King Rong, this pseudo-immortal weapon. At this time, Zhu Yun also moved. To be precise, Zhou Pao followed Zhu Yun's instructions and moved. When Lin Yu turned his back to this place, Zhou Pao controlled his yin immortal root and directly included the pseudo-immortal weapon in it, and then Zhu Yun threw the pseudo-immortal weapon into the universe. Suddenly, there was no trace of the pseudo-immortal weapon in the house. What's wrong with the pseudo-immortal weapon? Immortal King Derong didn't notice it. He also came to help solve the problem of how to use the pseudo-immortal weapon. It's not difficult to ask him to help collect the Yang fire, but after he collects it, whether Lin Yu can release the Yang fire is the key. But just after he finished speaking, he found that Lin Yu turned his head away. The fake immortal weapon is gone. Lin Yu felt cold all over. She didn't feel any movement at all. How could the fake immortal weapon disappear? Derong Immortal King frowned and said, "Fairy Lin, I handed the fake immortal weapon to you. How could it be gone?" Lin Yu said in a deep voice, "Wrong Immortal King, could it be that you still have some connection with this fake immortal weapon, and then took it away when I was not prepared?" There was no one in the room, and she couldn't feel any breath, so she would naturally think so. Derong Immortal King said angrily, "Fairy Lin, since I handed this fake immortal weapon to you, why would I take it back? This doesn't make sense." He was very angry, and felt that Lin Yu wanted to cheat another fake immortal weapon. Although this fake immortal weapon that collects Yang fire is not very useful, it is not useless. If you want it, just say it directly. Why slander me? Seeing that the immortal King Derong did not seem to be pretending, Lin Yu narrowed his eyes and said, "Immortal King Derong, I put down the pseudo-immortal weapon after seeing you. But before I could even finish a sentence with you, the pseudo-immortal weapon disappeared." Zhou Pao. Immortal King Rong thought of Zhou Pao at the first time, and his whole body was shocked, and he immediately lit up his immortal root. Only Zhou Pao has this characteristic, and can use his shadow immortal root to sneak in the shadow. And before in the broken immortal river, he did find the breath of Zhou Pao, but he didn't pay attention to it at that time. Zhou Pao? What Zhou Pao? Lin Yu was slightly stunned. Immortal King Derong used his immortal root to control the pseudo-immortal power in the air to spread the pressure, and on the other hand, he briefly explained, "One of my former subordinates has this ability. Now that it's dark, it makes him feel like a fish in water." Lin Yu's face changed. He wanted to control the power of the blood moon, but he saw that the pseudo-immortal power continued to spread out with the immortal King Derong as the center, and he was thinking about something in his heart. She knew that her ancestors came from Qingping Star, but she had never come into close contact with the use of pseudo-immortal power. Perhaps at this time, she could observe it. Seeing that the immortal King Derong was not angry because of the loss of a pseudo-immortal weapon, it was enough to show that he still had it. As for Zhou Pao's life or death, she didn't care, and she didn't expect that Zhou Pao actually came with Zhu Yun. "Zhou Pao, are you okay?" The pseudo-immortal power enveloped him, and Zhu Yun was a little worried. "He, Master, don't worry, the immortal king has a top-grade immortal root, and so do I. He is just using coercion, and it can't affect it at all. Even, You don't have to deliberately lower your voice when you speak here. Zhou Pao was full of confidence, but Zhu Yun acted cautiously. How long has it been since Zhou Pao broke through to the Yin immortal route? Okay, I know, he nodded, and said, they haven't fought yet, this is not easy to deal with. And I saw Lin Yu, it seems that she still has some strength left. Then aren't we leaving? Zhou Pao asked in a low voice. Not leaving yet, Zhu Yun pondered for a moment, and said, we'll act according to the situation. If they don't fight, I'll stay here. Soon, the pseudo-immortal power of the immortal King Derong covered the entire palace, and he couldn't find any trace of Zhou Pao at all. He couldn't help but frown. Lin Yu said, Rong Xian Wang, you should still have this pseudo-immortal weapon, right? I do have it, said the great Rong Xian Wang, but... I know what you mean, said Lin Yu, but you can think about it, as long as we leave Qingping Xian Kingdom and go to the spirit world, what happens here has nothing to do with us. Why don't you accompany me to collect the Yang fire at dawn tomorrow? In order to avoid accidents, you can take out the pseudo-immortal weapon then, how about it? The great Rong Xian Wang pondered for a moment and said, that's good, but Fairy Lin, when the time comes, you take me away from this place, and I will help you control the Yang fire, what do you think? Deal. Lin Yu saw what the great Rong Xian Wang was thinking, which was to gain a little advantage for their cooperation. But she didn't care. As long as they reached the Ascension secret realm, no matter how strong he, the great Rong Xian Wang, was, what could he do? The two reached a consensus and did not fall out because of the theft of the fake immortal weapon. Zhu Yun smiled bitterly and said to Zhou Pao, is this fake immortal weapon so useless? It is useless, Zhou Pao said, there are many people in Qingping immortal country who collect Yang fire. Unless they are Yang fire spirits, it is very difficult for them to control Yang fire for themselves. The two chatted casually until the immortal King Derong left, and then quietly followed him out. Zhu Yun's original intention was to confirm the actions of the immortal King Derong, and then let Zhou Pao lead the way to his treasure house. But halfway through the journey, he suddenly had an idea. Zhou Pao, aren't there still many cultivators from the spiritual world imprisoned here? They are indeed imprisoned in the dungeon. Master, do you want to release them all and let the immortal king think that it was the woman who did it? Zhou Pao immediately guessed Zhu Yun's intention. If so, it is really possible that the two people will fall out. He knew how much resources the immortal King Derong had spent to support these foreigners. The annual consumption was incalculable. Yes, since we can't do anything big now, we can only try to discuss the immortal King Derong. Didn't he find us? He must have thought we had left Derong King City. Zhou Pao pondered for a moment and said, Master, I have a good idea. Why don't you listen to it? I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1334. Zhou Pao devoted himself to doing things for Zhu Yun, but Zhu Yun was not suspicious, so he said, let's talk about it. Master, don't you have the great universe world? If you include all those foreigners from the immortal world into your world, immortal King Derong will definitely not be able to find these people, and he will definitely think that it was the woman who did it. In this way, Zhu Yun was stunned. It's not that he hadn't thought of this method before, it was just that he instinctively wouldn't use it unless absolutely necessary. But obviously, Zhou Pao didn't understand the relationship, so he explained, the world of the great universe is already another world, but the way of heaven is not yet complete. Of course, this is different from the damaged way of heaven in Qingping Fairy Kingdom. If we let them in, it's not impossible, but it will affect their immortal path invisibly. If you are contaminated by the way of heaven elsewhere, if you want to ascend, it will probably become more difficult. Hearing this, Zhou Pao couldn't help but be stunned and asked, then master, like me, or elder stick, can't ascend in the outside world? Zhu Yun's face condensed and he said, "It's not that it's impossible, but it will be difficult. But don't worry, as long as you focus on me, when my world is perfected, you will naturally be able to fly out and reach the fairy world." This is something he can be sure of, both World Mountain and World Tree have told him. But when talking about this, Zhu Yun also thought of another question. Will he really ascend from his world to the fairy world? He wasn't sure. Moreover, after the world is formed, will it exist in the fairy world like an ordinary world star? "Master, don't worry, I will definitely not have second thoughts." Zhou Pao looked determined. Zhu Yun smiled and said, "It's not difficult to include them. Let's go over and have a look before talking about it. I'm afraid that this matter goes against the will of heaven, so everything must follow their opinions, but we can't let them leave." He was worried that after some of the monks were let go, they would eventually be caught by the immortal King Durong. In this way, the purpose he gave Lin Yu would not be achieved. But then I thought about it, they are all monks in the spiritual world, if it can help them escape from the sea of suffering, maybe it will be a good thing. "Master," Zhou Pao said with a strange expression, "I believe that they will all choose to enter the world of the universe." Zhu Yun frowned. "Why?" Zhou Pao took a deep breath and gave it a try. "Master, you will know when you see them. The wrong immortal king has made these people miserable in order to prevent them from escaping." Zhu Yun immediately made a guess. Has the spiritual root been extracted? Zhou Pao was shocked. "Master, how do you know?" This was an extremely secret matter, and even he heard it from a few words. Qingping Immortal Kingdom has extremely abundant spiritual power, but the cultivation systems of monks and immortals are different. There is no realm pressure. The power that some monks burst out may even threaten the immortal king. In this way, after catching them, the wrong immortal king directly removed the immortal roots of the monks who threatened them or could not help them, leaving only some ordinary monks. But the number of these people can be counted on the palm of a hand. Go and have a look. These two people should never meet again. Zhu Yun is not worried that they will communicate with each other. The difference in strength may cause them to harm each other if they form a connection. Anyway, Zhou Pao could take him around the fairyland without being discovered at this time, and I have to say it was really useful. I originally wanted to take Xiaohuo out for a walk, but I couldn't use it. Zhu Yun followed Zhou around and around in a very casual manner until they reached the entrance of the dungeon. There were several immortal officials guarding the door. "You won't be discovered, right?" Zhu Yun asked in a low voice. "No, they couldn't find it when I was still a shadow immortal root, let alone now that I am a yin immortal root." Zhou Pao was full of confidence. He originally only belonged to the middle class and was not considered a close associate of the immortal king, but he had some information and knew that there was no hope for their ascension. The immortal king imprisoned these people here in order to leave the immortal kingdom and pursue the path to ascension. Therefore, he has been here several times, but he has to take time out every time, and when the immortal king is out, the number of times is not many. I came here recently, a few years ago. Taking Zhu Yun through the entrance, there were steps directly dug out at his feet. On the walls on both sides of the corridor, everlasting lanterns are hung. Zhu Yun could see the outside world, and he magically discovered that the flickering lights really couldn't reveal where they were. This yin immortal root is really magical. If you use it well, it may be of great help to him in the future. After walking for a while, Zhu Yun keenly discovered that the spiritual power in the air gradually became thinner. Zhou Pao explained, "Master, this is the immortal King Durong who has set up a pseudo-immortal formation outside to prevent these people from using their spiritual power to practice." Zhu Yun nodded. The pseudo-immortal formation should also be a formation, but the Tao used is different. It's just that there are 3,000 avenues, but different paths lead to the same destination. If he had time to study it carefully, he might be able to gain something. But obviously, this is not a suitable time. Does Immortal King do wrong no formations? Zhou Pao shook his head, indicating that he understood. Also, because of his position, he could not get too close to the core of the great Immortal King. Zuyun stopped asking questions and went all the way down. After a stick of incense, they arrived at the bottom of the dungeon. The ground is flat and very wet. Master, the dungeon is divided into two parts. Those locked outside are willing to serve the Immortal King. Those locked inside have their spiritual roots extracted. Should we go from the outside to the inside, or from the inside to the outside? Zuyun pondered for a moment and said, let's go inside first. If we give those cultivators without spiritual roots a little hope, they may obey me and voluntarily enter the world of the universe. He didn't think about how to place these people, but even if they returned to the spirit world and told them how to practice without spiritual roots, what would happen? Life is not inadequate, this is the biggest problem. On the contrary, if they enter the world of the universe, judging from the current situation, the difference in the flow of time can give them several times more time to study the avenue again. Of course, Zuyun will not tell any outsiders about this aspect of the world of the universe for the time being. At worst, he can use the power of the origin to infuse their bodies and make them the people of the world of the universe. In addition, Zuyun has another idea that he has not said, which is the golden light that comes out after kneeling down devoutly to worship him. If he could also create a statue of that mysterious power in the universe and collect it every day, it would be of great benefit to him. Breaking through the void refining stage is just around the corner. As his strength grows, he feels more and more weak. Not to mention the immortal kingdom. Even in the spirit realm, he thought that there would not be many powerful people left after so many ancestors who had passed the tribulation ascended to the immortal stage. As a result, many beings that could endanger his life appeared from time to time. Not to mention the evildoer Xianxia, there are also the Jiden sect from Qingping Star and the evil cultivators who act strangely. No matter which side, they are enemies to him. Zuyun is not difficult to take a step, but he must be careful at every step. Although the dungeon is deep, it is not wide. In just half a cup of tea, Zhou Pao brought Zuyun to a cell full of dirt. Master, these are the cultivators whose spiritual roots have been taken away. Zuyun retracted his thoughts and swept through the semi-transparent light curtain. There were more than 30 people. Some were very old, lying on the ground with their eyes narrowed. If it weren't for the occasional rise and fall of their chests, they would almost feel dead. There were also some who were in their prime, with dull eyes, sitting cross-legged. There was thick dust on their heads and bodies, and it was obviously not just a few years. There were no young cultivators. Because the young ones, even those who came last time, would need to survive for 1,000 years. Without the realm of the nascent soul, their lifespan was not enough. The only thing these people had in common was that they had lost hope of living. They were locked up here, without opportunities, without skills, and without anything. Even if they wanted to fight for a glimmer of life, how difficult would it be to realize the truth out of thin air? Generally speaking, there must be something hateful about pitiful people. But Zuyun had personally experienced entering the Qingping Immortal Kingdom by mistake, and knew that these people had no choice. But what these people were like still needed to be verified. After spending some time in the great universe world, you can see more or less. If someone has bad intentions, just kill him. Zuyun considers himself a kind person. But that is conditional kindness. He retracted his gaze, looked at Zhou Pao, and said, can your yin xian root cover them all? Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us, we will handle it as soon as possible, thank you for your understanding. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1335. Okay, but Zhou Pao looked suspicious. Speak directly if you have anything to say. Zhu Yun didn't like this the most, so he was a little unhappy. Master, not only does this place have no spiritual power, but even the pseudo-immortal power is limited. As I expand the scope, the pseudo-immortal power in my body is not enough. Zhu Yun understood, pondered for a moment, and said, after the things here are done, I will go to the world of Dazhu. Then we will leave the royal city and find a corner to go back first. Zhou Pao successfully broke through the yin immortal route through the great universe world, but in fact he has some contact with the great universe world. The pure pseudo-immortal power here has little effect on him. In comparison, the power of origin is more influential. Zhu Yun knew this, and he was also thinking in his heart. He didn't know if these people could provide the power of golden light in the future. Would it also be beneficial to those who entered the world of the universe to practice? Let's talk about it later. Take care of the things in front of you first. Zhu Yun said something again, and Zhou Pao did not hesitate to use the immortal roots to control the black light curtain and swallow up all the dungeons in this area. The first to bear the brunt were the middle-aged monks. They suddenly opened their eyes and saw an incredible scene. Although their spiritual roots are not there, they still have their realm, their vision, and their perception of the surrounding environment. There are some too. For them, Zhu Yun and Zhou Pao appeared in front of them almost at the same time. Who are you? A man who was downcast but dressed in a very formal manner stood up and shook off a lot of dust. After he opened his mouth, the elderly monks who were lying waiting for death slowly opened their eyes, and some of them sat on the fence holding onto the sewage on the ground. The cloudy pupils were lifeless. Zhu Yunhun didn't care, and raised his eyebrows slightly. I'm here to give you fellow Taoists a chance of survival. As soon as these words came out, there was silence in the darkness, not even the sound of breathing. Can you get us out? This male cultivator is still sane, and from the name of fellow Taoist Zhu Yun, he can tell that Zhu Yun is a person from the spirit world. But Zhu Yun's shaking head made these people stunned again. He smiled slightly and said, I told you, there is only a glimmer of hope. The male cultivator said with a smile, fellow Taoist, since you can appear here, this glimmer of hope is nothing more than all hope for us. No, Zhu Yun still shook his head and said, what I said is a thin line. Because I am not taking you back to the spirit world, but taking you away from here. That's all. If you don't go back to the spiritual world, then where are you going to go? Aren't fellow Taoists monks in the spiritual world? The male cultivator was a little confused. Zhu Yun smiled slightly and said, you, accept me as your master, and I will give you a chance of life. I have seen it all, you have lost your spiritual roots. If you can no longer embark on the path of immortality, you will have to endure hardships for a long time, and finally you will be able to survive. It will turn into a pile of withered bones. So this glimmer of hope is my real glimmer of hope. When he said this, even the old monk's eyes shone with light. Finally, an old man asked, what do fellow Taoists want to say? Is there a method of cultivation without spiritual roots? Without spiritual roots, one can only cultivate through other avenues, and there is no technique at all, so one can only rely on oneself to comprehend it. They naturally think so. No, 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 Zhu Yun still shook his head. He needed to whet the appetite of these people. He continued, it's not a cultivation method without spiritual roots, but I will find someone to teach you other great ways. What I can give, it's just this glimmer of hope, it's up to you whether you can grasp it. We still don't understand what fellow Daoist means. Fellow Daoist, please don't be pretentious and just say what you have to say. It was still the old man, and his speech became a little stronger. He suffered hardships, but he would rather die than surrender, which made King Durong unable to do anything to him. When a person doesn't care about anything, no one can threaten him. Including Zhu Yun in front of me. But Zhu Yun doesn't care. After the separation of the Great Universe World and the Great Universe Immortal Mansion, he can take people in without their consent. It's just that he is afraid that it will violate the Dao of the universe and affect his own cultivation, so he will always ask for other people's opinions and ask them to accept him as the master before agreeing. As soon as the old man opened his mouth, everyone else fell silent. Zuyun also knew that this old man must have a certain prestige here, so he simply said, "I have a world that can accommodate people. But I need you to recognize me, only the Lord can put you in it. You must have seen that I can sneak into the dungeon, and I can also escape from the dungeon. After entering my world, it is not so easy for you to come out. After all, this is my biggest secret." He deliberately sounded serious, but originally, as long as people entered the universe, unless they were extremely trusted, he would never let them out again. "I understand what fellow Taoist meant," the old man suddenly smiled bitterly. The more he knew, the faster he would die. He asked more questions, which left him with no choice. Old man has just entered the period of transcending tribulation. It's good to have tens of thousands of years of life, so try to learn other ways. The four words 10,000 years and longevity made everyone look envious. Zuyun, on the other hand, looked up. Is this considered a treasure? So, where are you guys? He looked at the others. We are all willing to follow Mr. G. It turns out that this old man's surname is G. Zuyun secretly wrote it down and said, "After I take you in, you stay where you are and don't move. If someone or a demon comes to ask questions, you can say that I, Zuyun, sent you in. I'll keep this in mind." Everyone bowed with all their strength. Zuyun continued, "Relax your mind, I will leave a mark on you. In fact, it doesn't matter whether he lets it go or not. If Zuyun wants to use the immortal soul hammer to do it forcefully, it's not impossible. These people have no spiritual protection. As long as they have spiritual consciousness, they can easily enter their purple mansions. This is why these people lie or sit like rotten people." But unexpectedly, as soon as Zhu Yonggong moved the immortal soul hammer, something strange happened. At first, Zhu Yun didn't notice that the shady story was owned by Zhou Pao Xianjin. But Zhu Yun's immortal soul hammer is a real immortal weapon. As soon as the fairy weapon comes out, even if it is not aimed at the shadow and black curtain, it will invisibly break the black curtain. Not good. Zhu Yun exclaimed, quickly took back the immortal soul hammer, and turned to Zhou Pao and said, "I'll send you back first, and you can settle these people." "Master, what about you?" Zhou Pao just realized what he was doing and asked immediately. "Don't worry about me, I have a way to escape." Zhu Yun's heart condensed, and he didn't have time to imprint soul marks on these people. He waved and sent them all into the world of the universe. And he quickly took out some spiritual stones and arranged several self-destruction formations on the ground. Then, he used the earth escape technique and escaped crazily underground. Sure enough. But a moment later, Immortal King Durong appeared here. A few breaths later, Lin Yu also came quietly. "Fairy Lin, that boy, probably wants to sow discord." Immortal King Durong's face was gloomy. If he hadn't found a new way out, someone would have broken into the dungeon without permission, which would have exposed his evil skin. Combined with the previously disappeared pseudo-immortal weapon, both Durong Immortal King and Lin Yu knew each other's purpose. "It should be Zhu Yun who is back," Lin Yu agreed with the words of Immortal King Durong. She looked at Immortal King Durong and said, "Next, we should believe each other unconditionally until we leave Qingping Immortal Kingdom." "That's right," Durong Immortal King's face relaxed. This was his purpose, and he nodded and said, "That kid is very scheming, and he has Zhou Pao to help him, however, I don't want this royal city anymore. Let's see if they can still how." After saying that, he stretched out his hand and a golden light flashed across his forehead, and the shadow of a flying boat flew out from his fingertips. Boom! After a breath, the outside of the dungeon was blown up. Fence, iron prison, monk. All annihilated into powder. Lin Yu's expression did not change. This great wrong immortal king was also a member of our generation, and he was so decisive in his killing. If you have the opportunity to take action, don't hold back. Don't worry, immortal King De Rong, Lin Yu said softly, tonight, we will stay together and wait until dawn to gather the sun fire. When the sun fire is enough, you and I will set off together. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1336. After a long time, Zuyun finally emerged from the ground. At this time, his face was extremely solemn. The dungeon was completely destroyed, but neither Lin Yu nor De Rong Immortal King pursued him. This shows that these two people no longer care about his life or death. The Immortal King De Rong wanted to leave the Immortal Kingdom, and Lin Yu wanted to win the Blood Moon Immortal artifact. Although there are still some problems between the two people, at least Zuyun can no longer provoke them. Go back to Duxian town first, look for Wan Potion, and see what he says. Zuyun knew that if these two people couldn't fight, they could only destroy Lin Yueming's collection of Yanghuo. And he definitely can't do it alone. After diving underground again, Zuyun rushed towards Duxian town. An hour later, he found Wan Potion. Boy, you are finally here. I heard them say that without you, this Duxian town would be destroyed. Wan Potion looked incomprehensible, and it was obvious that Duxian town was bound to him. Luo Xiaoyu also said, my best wishes, fellow Taoist, all the immortals want to thank you. That's not necessary, Zuyun shook his head and said, Fairy Luo, I have other business, can I avoid it? Luo Xiaoyu glanced at Wan Potion and left with the other immortal officials. Boy, where have you been? The monsters are all gone. Why are you running around if you're not waiting for me here? Wan Potion was in a hurry to go to the imperial city and said a little dissatisfied. I'm going to the royal city. Zuyun's eyes were solemn and he said, perhaps tomorrow, the master of Moyo sect will leave this place with immortal King De Rong. Wan Potion was shocked and said, you want to stop them? That's right, Zuyun said, Master Mou wants to collect Yang Fire, and immortal King De Rong will definitely be there to protect him. Do you know what kind of situation the spiritual world will be in after Master Mou succeeds? Wan Potion didn't know about the Blood Moon Immortal weapon, and Zuyun didn't even mention it. He didn't know about the Demon Moon sect at all. You mean, something big is going to happen in the spiritual world? Boy, I can't deal with the immortal King De Rong, but I don't think I can deal with the Demon Moon sect master. I can indeed explode with the strength of the tribulation stage now, but I can't deal with it. Just that. He knew Zuyun's purpose, but this was indeed the situation he was facing now. Unless he breaks through his immortal roots to the top level, then he has the strength to compete with it. Even more pseudo-immortal power can be commanded in an instant, and a stronger sword energy can be unleashed, thus killing Lin Yu in one fell swoop. Old man Wan, Zuyun said sternly, I can also find helpers to help you sneak attack Lin Yu. And I am responsible for inducing the tiger to leave the mountain. You transfer people, do you still have helpers? Wan Potion looked Zuyun up and down, obviously not believing it, and said, don't say it's your own incarnation, an incarnation is not enough. Zuyun nodded slightly and said, as long as you take action, it will be easy to handle. Leave the rest to me. Wan Potion was suspicious, boy, don't sell me out. I still want to return to the spirit world and ascend, and finally go to Yayong to sign with you. Zuyun smiled and said, old man, if you can take action, you will help me solve the biggest problem. Don't worry, after solving these two people, we can go to the Imperial City to find the Immortal Emperor with peace of mind. To be honest, the Immortal Emperor is also with me. A consensus was reached. Wan Potion opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he still swallowed it. This guy, did you hide this from me before? Humph, I'll settle the score with you after everything is over. Okay, then I have to prepare myself and get out of here. Zuyun chuckled, turned around and left. As long as he agreed, it wouldn't be a problem to curse a few more words. Returning to his house in the town mansion, Zuyun set up a formation and entered the world of Dazhu. From a distance, he saw a depression surrounded by more than 10 people. Zhou Pao sat quietly on the edge, feeling Zuyun's arrival, and then slowly opened his eyes. Master, it's great that you're okay. Zhou Pao is delighted by the color. Yes, Zuyun responded and turned to look at the monks, who were already shocked. Where is the space here that can accommodate people? This is clearly a portable world. The old man who had transcended the tribulation was well informed and recognized him. I've met the master. They followed Zhou Pao's call. Zuyun did not agree directly, but said, yes, this is indeed a world. Because of some accidents, I will not let you leave this world. But what I can guarantee is that if you practice here, it can provide great convenience. But one more thing, if anyone has evil intentions, don't blame me for being rude. Everyone was speechless. Even if some people felt unhappy, they would not speak due to reality. Very good, Zuyun turned around and said, follow me. These people have no spiritual roots, no spiritual power, and are not very fast. Zuyun winked at Zhou Pao, and Zhou Pao used the Yin Immortal root to include them all, and then quickly brought them to the foot of World Mountain. At this time, a golden light soared into the sky from the isolated island, followed by wild laughter. Ha ha ha, my pseudo-immortal weapon has become a masterpiece. Thank you, Master Yet. It's Zhougun. The laughter suddenly stopped. Zhougun discovered Zuyun, the golden light turned straight down, and quickly landed in front of Zuyun. I've met the master. Zhougun's face was filled with joy. He was extremely respectful to Zuyun, and he knelt down on the ground. He discovered that Zhou Pao's immortal roots had also transformed, and he was even more shocked. Zhougun, congratulations. Zuyun smiled faintly. Zhougun seemed not to see the person behind Zuyun, and said solemnly, thanks to the Master, the World Tree and Mr. World Mountain for providing me with such an opportunity. Of course, Master Yes spared no effort to create this pseudo-immortal weapon for me. As soon as the voice fell, the golden light dissipated, and it turned out to be a black-handled spear. The spearhead was extremely black, but a little black light could be seen flowing. Zhou Pao was immediately extremely envious. He only wanted Zhougun's pseudo-immortal weapon, but he didn't expect that he would get such a good thing. The master's master can actually refine a pseudo-immortal weapon. Very good, Zuyun smiled slightly and said, I will not treat any loyal person unfairly. It's great. If Zhougun cooperates with me, I will be sure to deal with the great wrong immortal king. As for Zhou Pao, Zuyun's plan is to let him cooperate with Wan Potion. Master, these people are. Zhougun looked at the monks behind him and felt familiar. The foreigners in the dungeon of Rongwang City. Zhougun took a breath and said in surprise, you rescued them all? The great wrong immortal king. He's fine, Zuyun said meaningfully, he has burned his boats and planned to leave the immortal kingdom alone with the demon moon sect master. As for your colleagues, they were left in the broken immortal river. Zhougun felt mixed emotions, but soon his mind became firm, saying, Master, don't worry, I will follow you, and I can't take care of the rest. It's not that he is heartless. But they actually have a lot of grudges. If it weren't for the opportunity to leave the immortal kingdom, they wouldn't cooperate. More often, they intrigue for favor. Now he feels the charm of this world and the strength shown by Zuyun. He won't even think about practicing in the spirit world. You can ascend here, so why go to the spirit world? Zuyun did not respond to Zhou Gun's words, but said, "Where is my master? Master has also gained something. If the master wants to see him." Before he finished speaking, the golden light rose again, and Yesuan, who had already flown over. His pupils shrank, but he was not too surprised. Master had broken through again. But it was not the spiritualization stage, but the middle nascent soul stage. It seems that his idea is feasible. Boy, did you see that? Master is gifted. It won't be long before he is the middle nascent soul stage. He will soon catch up with the spiritualization stage. Let you see how powerful Master is. Seeing the proud Yesuan, who like a naughty boy, Zuyun laughed dumbly. Master, don't worry about the realm or anything. I still have something important for you to do. What is the important thing? Yesuan Hua was stunned, and then he realized that there were many cultivators here, but these cultivators gave him a very strange feeling. I just found some Taoist friends in the tribulation crossing stage, Mahayana stage, well, anyway, at least in the nascent soul stage, to be your disciples. Zuyun smiled playfully, deliberately emphasizing the word disciple. Yesuan Hua stared, "Good boy, aren't you afraid that I will tire myself to death?" Zuyun shook his head and said, "Master, these people, their spiritual roots have been dug out, but they are still tough. You can't leave this world, so why don't you stay here and create a 7-star gate?" I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1337. This is what Zuyun thought. He certainly couldn't give up cultivation and guide these people to cultivate. On the contrary, Yesuan, who had nothing to do here and had a lot of free time. In addition, he had just broken through the nascent soul stage, and his lifespan increased by several hundred years. In addition, the difference in the speed of time in the great universe world allowed him to rebuild a 7-star gate. In Dongsheng realm, there is indeed a 7-star gate. But the 7-star gate is far from what Yesuan Hua wants. It is even impossible to see it in his lifetime. On the contrary, the great universe world may be able to fulfill his long-cherished wish. Sure enough, when Zuyun said this, Yesuan Hua's eyes lit up. You mean, let them all learn from me? He still had some doubts. After all, these people had reached such a high realm before, would they be willing to choose these boring cultivation methods again? Yes, Zuyun smiled faintly and said, if they still want to continue to cultivate, they can only start with other ways. In addition, at this point, Zuyun stopped talking. Because the previous requirements are enough. As for the changes in the universe in the future, perhaps the new power system here can be cultivated without spiritual roots, and they can choose at that time. Of course, the premise is that these people are as loyal as Zhou Pao or Zhou Gun. But if they join the 7 Stars Gate re-established by Yesuan Hua, Zuyun will not be able to brand them with the immortal soul hammer. What Zuyun wants is to make them loyal to Yesuan Hua. Respected teacher. Okay, I know. Yesuan Hua suppressed his excitement and looked at these people with a serious expression. I am Yesuan Hua, and I have 7 methods. I can teach you everything I know. You can choose not to worship me as a teacher, or you can choose only a few of them to learn. But the premise is that you must be loyal to the 7 Stars Gate. Yesuan Hua is also a person with ideas. None of these people's realms are weaker than his. If he becomes a teacher again, I am afraid that they will have some grudges. In the short term, there will be no problem. But in the long run, that is not necessarily the case. On the contrary, he gave them enough faith so that they could concentrate on learning the Dao. We are willing. The leading ancestor of the tribulation crossing agreed without hesitation. At the same time, he also looked up to Yesuan Hua. This person seems to be a little unruly, but his grasp of people's hearts is okay. Very good. Xianxia smiled and looked at Zuyun, saying, then you should teach us the place of the 7 daos, right? He knew that the World Mountain was the place that Zuyun valued the most, so he took the initiative to make this request. Zuyun naturally understood and said, this world is not small, where the master wants to go, go there. The volcano where the formation fairy was originally located is not bad, and it can also condense the earth fire, which will greatly help in refining tools and alchemy in the future. Xianxia already has a place he likes. Since these people have lost their spiritual roots, they definitely don't have spiritual fire. So alchemy can only rely on the earth fire here. However, the universe has not yet produced fire veins. If you want to use earth fire, you can only use the power of the origin. And this made Zuyun suddenly shocked. There is no earth fire. What about yang fire? The burning sky flame is a yang fire spirit. This means that the yang fire of Qingping immortal country can actually produce spiritual fire. If the yang fire is collected and some means are applied, perhaps this problem can be solved. The power of the origin is very useful. If these people are only allowed to learn to refine pills and tools, it would be a bit of a waste. Master, you go there first. There is no rush to refine tools and pills. I will solve the fire source for the time being. He just stole a pseudo-immortal tool that can collect yang fire, and with the spiritual tool of the focusing cup, it can provide yang fire in a short period of time. These people must have good talents, otherwise they would not have practiced to this point. It is not a problem to refine pills and tools later. Okay, then I'll leave this matter to you. In addition, I'll name the mountain over there the 7-star mountain, how about that? Master, as long as you're happy. Zuyun readily agreed, and then said to Zhou, you help my master and take these people there. Yes, master. Zhou bowed, and the group of cultivators thanked Zuyun again. Zuyun remembered something again, took out a handful of spirit beads and gave them to Xianxia, and called Xiaohuo, Xiaohuo, you and my master are familiar with each other, go and help for the time being, there is no big problem here in Qingping Fairyland. Xiaohuo is at the level of a demon saint, even if these people have bad intentions, I think they can handle it. He must be foolproof. After they left, Zuyun said to Zhou, I have a battle with the immortal King Derong, and I need your help. Immortal King Derong. Zhou's expression tensed, but then relaxed, and he said seriously, Master, don't worry, the immortal King Derong has never treated us sincerely, and I won't have any psychological burden. That's good, Zuyun was still very relieved about this. After all, he was branded by the immortal soul hammer, and he believed that Zhou would not turn against him in the battle. As long as he had a thought, Zhou would be immediately controlled by him. This is much more powerful than the puppet soul control technique back then. Zuyun also told all his plans, and Zhou remembered them one by one. Not long after, Zhou also came back. He also told Zhou's mission, and told him that he had to join hands with Wan Potion, slowly approach Lin Yu who was collecting yang fire, and strive to kill him with one blow. As for Zhou, Zuyun had to be ready to save him at any time. Once he was called out, he needed to immediately lock the immortal king and kill him together. In this way, even if Wan Potion did not kill Lin Yu quickly, he and Zhou could rush over to help. Zuyun did not believe that the four of them could not deal with Lin Yu. But in addition to this, Zuyun still needed to make some preparations. After everything was settled, he left the great universe world and found Wan Potion again. Is everything arranged? Wan Potion glanced at Zuyun's back and said meaningfully. He now knew that Zuyun still had many tricks to hide from him. For example, no one could see a good helper now. Almost done. Now, I want some spirit stones and spirit beads. Do you have any? Wan Potion grinned, "Boy, you are not trying to blackmail me, are you? Just tell me if you have any. These things are not valuable here." "Yes, but not much," Wan Potion sighed. "Spirit beads are easy to say, but spirit stones, you also know that we don't have much use for them. We don't collect them at all. There are a lot of them in the warehouse, but they are all used to repair the streets. Go and get them yourself." "Could it be a medium-grade spirit stone?" "I want a high-grade spirit stone. To deal with a person in the tribulation period, it is estimated that even 10,000 medium-grade spirit stones will not hurt Lin Yu." At the bottom of the broken Immortal River, he used several self-destruct arrays to blow Elderly to death in it. "Then I can't do anything." Wan Potion spread his hands, and Zuyun was helpless. He had to return to his residence and kept playing with the spirit beads in his hands. Looking down, an idea suddenly popped up in his mind. Spirit stones contain natural spiritual power, while spirit beads can store spiritual power after refining. If I use the 5 spirit beads of gold, wood, water, fire, and earth, all filled with spiritual power, and then set up a self-destruct array, can such an effect be achieved? No one would have thought of using spirit beads to set up an array. The Immortals of Qingping Immortal Country have different cultivation systems and use completely different arrays. In Huangmingxing, there are not many spirit beads, and no one will study their functions other than storing spiritual power. So, there is no experience at all in this regard. But when this idea came up, Zuyun thought about the feasibility of it. After thinking for an hour, Zuyun also came to a conclusion. It is feasible, but in addition to the limitation of its function, how to control the spiritual power to maintain balance and entanglement is the biggest problem. Or, go find Master. Remembering that he really got the inheritance of the array fairy, and his array talent is even stronger than his, Zuyun entered the world of the universe again. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1338. Kixing Mountain. When he came to this newly named mountain, Zuyun discovered that Yesuanhua had already started preaching. To his slight surprise, Yesuanhua was telling them about talismans. A group of powerful ancestors with different realms, but just like mortals, all held a wooden stick and concentrated on writing and drawing on the ground. Zuyun recognized that they were all drawing the most basic fireball talisman. "Master, why did you pass on the talisman first?" Zuyun landed in the universe, and Yesuanhua was chatting with Xiaohuo, who had turned into a human form. "Hey, you are so worried that you came to inspect it in person." Yesuanhua raised his head and said lightly. "Zuyun is happy, this master is quite impressive. I have something to come over, about the formation." Zuyun also said bluntly. "My good disciple, I have taught you all the ways of formation. There is nothing to teach you. You have to learn it on your own next. And the formation immortal also said that you are more capable than me, and you asked me." Zuyun said helplessly, "It's a brand new idea for me, and I'm not sure about it, so I came to ask Master." Hearing the word brand new, Yesuanhua sat up suddenly, his eyes gleaming, and said eagerly, "Boy, have you realized the great way again? It's not the Tao, it's the idea." Zuyun emphasized, and then took out 5 spirit beads. "It's just that these 5 spirit beads are not filled with spiritual power." Yesuanhua frowned and said, "You want to use this thing to set up an array?" He also has some spiritual beads, which Zuyungang gave him. He has never seen them before and is still studying them. But Zuyun told him that he knew this could store spiritual power. I thought Zuyun was for his self-defense to prevent these people from taking action. Unexpectedly, Zuyun actually wanted to set up a formation? He also immediately fell into deep thought. Zuyun did not interrupt. After a moment, Yesuanhua said with great solemnity, "Theoretically, it is possible. But there are great limitations. Zhu Yun's guess was the same, and he didn't shy away from it. He said bluntly, "Master, I'll set up a formation. You have a look, and then we'll talk." He stretched out his hand and rolled up Yesuanhua. After thinking for a moment, he brought Xiaohuo over again and landed in an open space more than 10 miles away from Qixing Mountain. He rummaged through his storage bag and finally found 5 medium-grade spiritual stones, and then set up a self-destruct array. "What's the use of your formation?" Yesuanhua couldn't understand. The formation patterns inside clearly connect all 5 directions, and the spiritual power flows and can change each other. The principles of the 5 elements are somewhat known to monks in the spiritual world. Although Yesuanhua is not particularly proficient, he still understands the principles of mutual complementation and complementarity. It's just that these spiritual powers can flow freely, but he doesn't know what the meaning is. Zhu Yun smiled and said, "Master, please change your thinking. The power of the 5 elements is to balance. But if we work against the flow and let these spiritual powers flow in a mutually restraining order, what do you think will happen?" Yesuanhua looked solemnly and said, "Needless to say, it must have been an explosion." Before he finished speaking, his expression changed and he said in shock, "Good boy, do you want to use the spirit stone explosion to hurt people?" "Yes," Zhu Yun chuckled and said, "this is a formation I got by chance. All spiritual power has only one purpose, which is to explode. I call it the self-destruction formation." Yesuanhua pondered again. After a moment, he said, "Boy Zhu Yun, use the spirit beads to arrange this formation. If it takes shape, it will be extremely powerful. But the premise is, how to make these spirit beads form a connection. If it is an ordinary formation, I am afraid it will not hold up. The spiritual power that keeps flowing back. Spirit beads can store huge amounts of spiritual power. But when there is too much spiritual power, a sufficiently wide channel is needed for its circulation. Just like a person's meridians, a monk with a weak realm cannot transmit much spiritual power at one time. There is naturally more spiritual power in the spirit beads than in the spirit stones. But if the formation pattern is still laid out in the original way of self-destruction array, then the spiritual power will not be able to overcome it, and the formation pattern will not be able to hold up. When the time comes, it is very likely that these spiritual powers will not explode, but will be vented out. Such a result is meaningless. Instead, 5 spirit beads will be lost." Yesuanhua did not help Zhu Yun solve the problem directly, but he pointed out the unreasonable aspects. Zhu Yun was not disappointed and said, "Then is it feasible for us to expand the formation pattern?" "It's definitely possible, but how to do it? From what I can see, you only use 5 spiritual stones for this formation. In fact, it is also to make the formation faster. If it is accurate, it is tantamount to a killing move. Yes, as long as the design is good, others can step into it. Sometimes, I directly lay out several self-destruction formations, and then bury the spirit-guiding formations to form a trap." Yesuanhua thought for a moment and said, "The spirit-guiding array, if we change the spirit-guiding array and use the spirit-gathering array, what do you think?" Spirit-gathering array. A flash of light appeared in Zhu Yun's mind. This was a formation he had never considered. Generally speaking, the spirit-gathering array gathers the spiritual energy in the world in one place, so that when practicing, you can be in a place where the spiritual energy is more intense. But, yes, the spirit-gathering array, while Zhu Yun was thinking, Yesuanhua's thoughts also opened up, and he just heard him say, "It's just that this spirit-gathering array needs to be slightly modified." Originally, the spirit-gathering array did not have a clear the target, to be precise, is the spiritual power floating between heaven and earth. But what if we are more specific and aim the spiritual power we want to gather? I wish Yun suddenly had a sudden enlightenment. If the spirit-gathering array is used, the problem will almost be completely solved. The spirit gathering power does not absorb spiritual power through the array pattern, but uses the array pattern to create a vortex I to generate suction. If 5 spirit beads are arranged separately on the edge, and a spirit gathering array is placed in the center, they will attract the spiritual power in the spirit beads and gather them in the center. What method can be used to reverse the flow of these spiritual powers and restrain each other in reverse? Then that's for sure. However, such a self-destruction array has lost its instantaneous effect. It's feasible. It's nothing more than setting it up in advance and attracting people over. The spirit gathering array is connected to a spirit guiding array. As long as someone steps into a certain range, the spirit guiding array will activate the spirit gathering array. Yeah, that's all I can think about right now. Yasuanhua nodded and said, actually, I have a better idea. What's the idea? Zuyun asked. This is also the idea you gave me here. Yasuanhua took out a light blue spirit bead and said, you gave it to me by mistake, right? It should be an ice spirit bead. Ice spirit pearl. Zuyun didn't notice. Because the ice spirit pearl and the water spirit pearl are very similar. You know, if the 9-turn 9-yang formation created by my master is extremely simple, it can be arranged with 9 spirit stones. I believe that with your strength, you can form the formation instantly. Zuyun's eyes lit up when he heard Yasuanhua continue to say, if 9 spirit beads are used to set up the 9-turn 9-yang formation, then the 9 spirit beads will become the 9-wheeled sun in the formation. And these 9 wheels, you can completely control the spiritual power of the 9 spiritual beads, which can be released instantly and fall at the same time, and all the spiritual power in them can be released. Zuyun's breathing became rapid and he said, Master, do you mean to use 9 kinds of spirit beads with different attributes? In addition to the 5 elements spiritual pearls, plus the ice spiritual pearls, wind spiritual pearls, and the thunder spiritual pearls he obtained earlier, these are 8 different spiritual pearls. Still missing one. Zuyun couldn't help but think of the blood moon spirit pearl in Lin Yu's hand. He sighed, 9 spirit beads were not enough, so what if we gave up the method of mutual restraint and used 9 identical spirit beads? Although the power was great, Zuyun did not dare to make a conclusion as to whether it could reach a higher level. What's wrong? Yasuanhua was surprised. Zuyun smiled bitterly, Master, I may only have 8 different kinds of spirit beads. In addition to the 5 elements, I have 3 other kinds, and only one of each kind. That's a bit difficult to handle. Yasuanhua thought hard and said, I know that you have the 5 elements spiritual root, so can you use 2 spirit beads to combine them to create different spirit beads? You know, your main thing is relying on the mutual restraint of the 5 elements. I honestly don't think the other spirit beads are too important. Zuyun rolled his eyes. The Lingzhu was a treasure. Even if it was ruined in Qingping Fairy Kingdom, he couldn't fuse it if he wanted to. However, when Yasuanhua said this, he thought of an alternative. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1339. Because he was thinking about the self-destruction formation at first, his thoughts were briefly stuck on it. The self-destruction formation is a collision between the 5 elements of spiritual power, but the 9 turns and 9 suns is not. If Zuyun paused and said, what if I have 9 fire spirit beads to arrange them into a 9-turn 9-yang formation? As soon as the words fell, Yasuanhua's eyes immediately burst into light. If the fire spirit power among the 9 spirit beads is extremely full, then this formation will explode with great power. Zuyun followed the words and continued, if 81 fire spirit beads are used to set up a 9-turn 9-yang formation. Yasuanhua shook his head and said, Zuyun, you have deviated from your original intention again. The meaning of the 81 9-turn 9 yang array is its variety. And you just want to use the 9 round sun in the 9-turn 9 sun, only it only takes 9 spirit beads. If there are more, it won't have much effect. Zuyun was stunned for a moment, and then suddenly realized that this was indeed the case. Then Master, he said after pondering, if the sun transformed from 9 spiritual beads explodes at the same time, can it kill the tribulation stage? Yasuanhua opened his mouth and said in disbelief, good boy, you are only in the stage of becoming a god, and you want to survive the tribulation stage. He knew that Zuyun had the ability to surpass the enemy's level, but when did he become so strong? Unfortunately, he had previously thought of breaking through to the divine transformation stage as soon as possible, and then having a fight with Zuyun. Although he was a little disappointed, from the bottom of his heart, he was still happy for Zuyun. This is the disciple he taught. You think I do? Zuyun rolled his eyes, played with the spirit bead in his hand, sighed, and said, the master of Moyo sect is in the period of transcending tribulation. Master, before I met you, in the spiritual world it was like I'm like a lost dog. I've been through several tribulation periods, but they still want to accept me as their disciple. Yasuanhua said angrily, then why don't you change the sect? After all, I haven't always asked you to be a disciple of my 7-star sect, right? Zuyun clearly heard the sour smell in it and smiled casually, my good master, although I am not a disciple of the 7-star sect, you taught me this ability when I embarked on the path to immortality. And, no matter what, whether it's the formation Deo, talisman Deo, or even the immortality technique, it's been of great help to me. Yasuanhua exclaimed in shock, good boy, do you also use the immortality technique in the spiritual world? This is just a warrior's Qinggong technique, what's the use for you? Zuyun also remembered that although Yasuanhua was proficient in talismans, he only used talismans in battle, so he said, Master, I got a book of talismans, which taught many auxiliary talismans. Add the breath condensing talisman and the immortality technique, it's very useful. As he spoke, he fumbled around in the ring and finally found the talisman he had snatched from Yuzhaibai hand and handed it to Yasuanhua. Yasuanhua immediately flipped through it, briefly browsing it, and looked overjoyed. In fact, he is also limited by his own realm and his vision is not broad. Even if he reaches the foundation building stage, he has been imprisoned in the Spirit Sword sect for 100 years, so how can he have any experience? This talisman book made his eyesight brighten. It is no exaggeration to say that this talisman can be improved again. His weapon path, alchemy path, and formation path have temporarily reached a bottleneck. If he wants to break through again, he will find another way. Planting elixirs, brewing wine, and the secret of longevity are all three that are difficult to practice. Therefore, this is tantamount to pointing out a new avenue for Yasuanhua. Maybe this battle can help him soar into the sky. Yasuanhua's cultivation talent is not very good, but when he studies these skills, he has a reckless energy. Good boy, I accept your love. This book is so beautiful. Has your problem been solved now? Get out of here. Yasuanhua couldn't wait. After putting the book away, he picked out all the fire spirit beads from the spirit beads given by Zuyun and returned them. He knew the difficulties Zuyun was facing, and he couldn't do much to help for the time being. So he also wanted to continue practicing as soon as possible. If he reached the stage of becoming a god, he might be able to help Zuyun. In addition, he is in urgent need of the fire spirit pearl. He has no use for the time being, so he might as well give it back to him. Then Master, I'm leaving now, don't miss me. Zuyun turned around and walked away in the air. You brat, Yasuanhua turned to Xiaohuo and said, Xiaohuo, help me watch those people and draw the talisman carefully. I'll go read a book. Xiaohuo smiled and said, okay, Master, I will watch over you when you get back. Zuyun returned to Qingping Naiguo and found one potion overnight. Wan Potion was very unhappy after being pulled up from the bed. Boy, you dug 3 feet into Duxian town and still can't find a single high-grade spiritual stone. Even if you can find the spiritual veins now, it's too late. It won't be long before dawn, right? Hey, Mayor, I don't want the spirit stone anymore. Do you have the spirit beads? Ling Zhu. Looking at Zuyun with a smirk on his face, Wan Potion asked curiously, Boy, what do you want the spirit pearl for? Is it possible that you have found other ways to deal with it? Zuyun nodded and said, maybe after using it, it will be more useful than the spirit stone. To be precise, what I need is the fire spirit bead. Wan Potion couldn't feel the spiritual attributes, but the color of the spirit beads was fixed. The fiery red spirit bead is naturally the fire spirit bead. Yes, there are, but I don't have many here. How many do you need? The more the merrier. Wan Potion thought for a moment and said, there are not many in the town, and I usually don't distinguish the properties of the spirit beads. So, let's go and take a look first. Also, I'll call Xianxia over. There should be more or less in the hands of the Immortals. It's not good to ask them. If it was just the immortal officials, Zuyun would have no idea, but to plunder the Immortals. He felt a little bit reluctant. They desperately went to collect Yan Hansen, wasn't it for the spirit beads? The spirit beads were their money. It doesn't matter, Wan Potion said with a smile, now these Immortals know that you solved the beast tide and have great trust in you. Besides, I can exchange other spirit beads with them, which should not be a problem. Then I'll have to trouble the mayor. Zuyun said politely, but Wan Potion became a little suspicious. Boy, you are not plotting against me, are you? Zuyun was immediately happy. Old man, what am I plotting against you? Wan Potion stared and said angrily, Boy, when I become a great swordsman, I will cut your clothes into pieces. The two of them quarreled and left the house. Wan Potion found Xianxia, but Xianxia went to inform Luo Xiaoyu. They remembered that Luo Xiaoyu was the mayor of Duxian town now. They went to the royal city. Wan Potion resigned from the position of mayor and recommended Luo Xiaoyu to join the job. The immortal king was concerned about Lin Yu's situation at the time, so he agreed directly without a word of nonsense. This may be related to the fact that Wan Potion was once an immortal official in the imperial city. I almost forgot. Mayor Luo, Zhu needs to use the fire spirit bead. Can you take some people to find the Immortals to get it? Luo Xiaoyu had no objection and nodded. The four of them went directly to the storehouse of the town government. The storehouse was not big, and the spirit beads were placed in a container like a water tank. In the corner on the other side, there were piles of smoke soul powder. But in the middle, there were many purple crystals. This is used to maintain the formation here. Wan Potion said lightly, and Zuyun suddenly realized that it was no wonder that he looked familiar, so he said, can you give me a piece of this thing? Take it, 1 piece is not much. Besides, I don't know what will happen next. Wan Potion made the decision directly, and Luo Xiaoyu didn't care. They would all go to the spirit world at that time. As for the Immortals in Duxian town, they can only rely on their own luck. Zuyun didn't take much. He didn't know what the purple smoke stone was for, but he could put it in the great universe world and let Yesuan Hua study it, or ask the world tree world mountain. After putting the purple smoke stone into the ring, Zuyun released his spiritual consciousness and picked out all the fire spirit beads in it. There were more than 100. After he put away the fire spirit beads one by one, he wanted to look for spirit beads other than the 5 elements. You don't know until you look for it. You actually found it? Ice spirit beads, thunder spirit beads, wind spirit beads, these 3 kinds add up to more than 10. It was an unexpected surprise. So are there other spirit beads? Luo Xiaoyu took some ordinary spirit beads and took Xianxia to the town, while he poured his spiritual consciousness into the water tank. After a moment, he was stunned. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1340. This is a green bead, very similar to the wood spirit bead. But if you take a closer look, the aura emanating from it is completely different. But Zuyun felt a touch of familiarity. Poison. Poison spirit pearl. The aura that seemed familiar to Xiaolu. Why, there are also spiritual beads with this attribute. Zuyun didn't think much about it. He even had the blood moon spirit pearl, so the appearance of the poison spirit pearl was not a strange thing. Moreover, poisonous miasma can also appear in some wild mountains and forests that are full of spiritual energy. Since it is possible to exist, it means it is consistent with the way of heaven. Zuyun's eyes flashed, and there was a spiritual light. Various powers in the spiritual world have spirit beads, and even the power of the blood moon, which is beyond spiritual power, also has spirit beads. So does Yang fire, which corresponds to the power of the blood moon, also have spiritual beads? In addition, will the pseudo-immortal power of Qingping Immortal Kingdom have pseudo-immortal beads? This still needs to be verified. However, Zuyun himself did not need to practice pseudo-immortal power, but thought of the chaotic power in his body. Whether are there chaos orbs? Thinking of this, Zuyun's breathing became rapid. He couldn't help but look inside his body and subconsciously regarded the 28 lotus hearts on the chaos lotus as chaos beads. But obviously, it's still different. The most obvious difference is that the lotus heart is not perfectly round. But other than that, the rest of the features seem to be the same. The chaos power he refined will eventually be stored in the lotus heart. Whether it is the 24 ordinary lotus hearts or the lotus hearts that represent the 4 divine beasts, the lotus hearts that are born later are the same. The role of chaos lotus is to help him refine the power of chaos, or convert the remaining 5 attributes of spiritual power into chaos power. Perhaps I will know about this when I break through to the void refining stage. Zuyun came to his senses again, carefully took out the poison spirit bead, and then asked Wan Potion, "Senior Wan, do you know where this bead came from?" Wan Potion narrowed his eyes. Zuyun's name for him changed, indicating that he was asking for help. He grinned, "I don't know." Zuyun knew this was the result. After all, it was very similar to the properties of the wood Lingzhu. Besides, he had never paid attention to the properties of the Lingzhu before. How could he remember it? He simply put it away and said, "Let's go, we'll be there at dawn." Set off. "Hey, kid, just because I don't know doesn't mean others don't know." Zuyun's reaction was beyond Wan Potion's expectation, and he immediately became anxious. Zuyun paused, turned around and asked, "Who?" Yuan Kong knows. Yuan Kong was also an immortal official. Zuyun remembered that the boy's immortal root turned out to be the abacus immortal root. Let's face it, this does not belong to the war immortal root. It belongs to the Wen immortal official, just like Wan Potion's by immortal root. However, Yuan Kong developed his immortal roots to the extreme and was able to control the abacus to cause range attacks. However, his immortal root is used to manage the warehouse, so it can be regarded as the counterpart of the immortal root. Are you sure? Nonsense, Wan Potion said angrily. All the spirit beads were collected by his hands. In order to prevent anyone from making false claims, he has registered them all. Just look for them and you will know. Zuyun thought for a moment and said, "There is still time now, then I will go find Yuan Kong, and you can stay where you want to cool off." "Good boy, don't you recognize me now?" The weather was extremely bad, but there was nothing we could do. He knew that Zuyun might have another idea, and he couldn't help. Otherwise, Zuyun would definitely call him. Yuan Kong also lived in the town mansion, and the two parted at the door of the warehouse. Wan Potion still has to wait for Luo Xiaoyu to come back, put the spirit beads he collected together, and finally give them to Zuyun. Zuyun also found Yuan Kong in a side house of the town government. Wish immortal, what's the big deal here late at night? Yuan Kong's face was full of flesh, he looked extremely fierce, and he also had a big bald head. If Zuyun hadn't seen his immortal roots, he really wouldn't have believed that he was a person in charge of the warehouse. Do you remember the speed? Zuyun took out the poison spirit pearl without saying a word. Yuan Kong also couldn't feel the spiritual power on it, so he said, I remember, it was an immortal citizen who collected insufficient smoke soul powder 3 months ago and used it to deduct taxes. Immortal people make a living on Yanhun powder, which to them is equivalent to money. You can deduct the tax when you hand it in, and you can also directly exchange it for the spirit beads after the tax is deducted. Are you sure? Seeing Yuan Kong say it directly, Zuyun couldn't help but wonder, was it too hasty? Even Wan Potion didn't see the difference between the spirit bead and the wood spirit bead. Sure, Yuan Kong said sternly, Immortal Zhu, at first I thought this bead was an act by the immortal people, so I brought a fake one over because the color was a little different from the normal green beads. That time I verified many, I'm sure it's just a different color, so I brought it in, so I'm very impressed. Zuyun thought for a moment and said, then do you still remember where the immortal people live? Master Zhu, would you like to ask about the origin of the beads? Yuan Kong thought for a moment and realized that this bead was not common. Perhaps he had asked Zuyun and guessed what he was thinking. That's right, Zuyun said with a smile, things are rare and valuable. Since you are the collector of spirit beads, you know that these spirit beads are extremely rare. I want to collect some to see. Yuan Kong smiled, but still hesitated, that's true, but Immortal Zhu. It doesn't matter. It just so happens that Mayor Luo has taken Shan Hao from house to house to help me find the spirit beads. Let's stop by and ask. It shouldn't be a problem, right? That's good. Although they were not considered to love the people like their own children, they were in official positions and knew not to disturb those immortal people if nothing happened. Population is the basis for a town's survival. If no one goes to collect the smoke and the soul is gone, they will not be able to exchange it for the purple smokestone. Purple smokestone is the only way to deal with the beast tide. Of course, if the beast tide can be solved, the purple smokestone will not be used. Under the leadership of Yuan Kong, Zuyun came to a broken house in the east. I've seen Immortal Zhu and I've met Immortal Yuan. Inside, there was a middle-aged man, probably much older. After seeing the two of them, he stood up tremblingly and saluted. Yuan Kong took a step forward and said, Sun Tianming, I am here to wish the Immortals a blessing. Do you still remember the spirit beads you gave me last time? Zuyun had previously handed the spirit bead to Yuan Kong, and he took it out directly, spread out his palm, and presented it to Sun Tianming. Sir, this is really a spiritual pearl, it cannot be faked. Sun Tianming was confused, with panic in his tone, didn't you check it several times last time, and finally put it all in? There seemed to be no problem with these words, but Zuyun heard it. There is no moon in Qingping Fairy Kingdom, and the night is very dark. Not only can I not see my fingers, but it is not too different. Neither Yuan Kong nor Zuyun brought torches, and Sun Tianming didn't light candles either. The illumination at this time was entirely due to the faint golden light emitted by Yuan Kong's immortal roots. In other words, the poison spirit bead at this time actually looks no different from the wood spirit bead. But Sun Tianming recognized it at a glance. Even Wan Potion couldn't recognize him, how could he, an ordinary immortal, recognize him? I said, this time I am here to wish the immortal. But I am not asking if there is something wrong with this spiritual bead, but, do you still have this spiritual bead? As soon as these words came out, Sun Tianming trembled all over, and was immediately noticed by Zuyun. He didn't speak, but kept paying attention to Sun Tianming's reaction, which already explained his problem. Sun Tianming, Yuan Kong became more serious and said, "You don't have to be afraid. If you still have the spirit bead, you can naturally take it out, and we can exchange it with you for other spirit beads." With that said, Yuan Kong took out several spirit beads of different colors, all with 5 elements attributes. This. Sun Tianming also saw that they were not here to ask for guilt, but he still hesitated. At this time, Zhu Yun also spoke, "Sun Tianming, don't panic. These spirit beads look interesting to me, so I want to find a few to play with and see if they can be strung together into a bracelet. Sun Tianming, you must not be ignorant. You can still survive because Zhu Xianxia subdued the beast tide. Now, we are not taking it by force, we are exchanging other spirit beads with you." Seeing that he still didn't respond, Yuan Kong's tone became a little stiffer, and the light of the immortal root became a little brighter. Sun Tianming hesitated for a long time and then said, "Sir, Zhu Xianxia, I still have a few of these spiritual beads. It's just that these spiritual beads are of great importance. I had no choice but to pay taxes last time, just took out these spirit beads.